Hello, welcome to this Sunday edition of my podcast, To Know Where. This is an unnumbered Lost in Transition episode. Today is August 31st, 2025, last day of the month. Thanks for joining me to listen to this talk where I'm going to talk a little about, this talk I'm going to talk, of course. I will discuss, let's use a different word, right? At least show I have some variety of language that's worth listening to here, Please stay. Please listen to me. No, and honestly, I mostly talk to myself here. As I've said in many different podcasts, brainstorm sessions, all these other reasons that I make podcasts for. A lot of times it's because I learn more, I get more out of my material, things I'm going through by speaking about them. Life is really hard. Not only like personal things, spiritual things, lessons of life, but also, learning material is fun to share and fun to talk about, and metaphysics and all that kind of stuff. Today I'm not going to be talking about that area. What I want to talk about on Sacred Sunday here, wow, yeah, what a great day for this. Message to come through, and for me to, I had this epiphany in my sun prayers this morning, in my quiet moments with God in my bathroom. Perfect window for the sunrise. It happens to be in this wonderful new room. Well, actually, we've been here for well over a year, so it's not new anymore, really. But that said, I had a wonderful deepening of the layers, right? A pulling back of sort of the veil or the thin ice breaking for me on this concept of enemies. And I've been talking about enemies and friends and positive service versus negative service, light and shadow work, all these kind of things, since I started my YouTube channel a couple years ago. But specifically, I made a podcast a couple of weeks ago. I'll try to link it below, get time to come back around after I get everything uploaded later, and put that recent one in there. I was talking a little bit about enemies. And I've been ruminating on this, speaking with friends, and it's such a strong vibe in the world right now. I mean, it's supercharged wars everywhere. We're on the slave master overdrive cycles. Everything's like full volume, full blast. And my tactic and technique, as always, has been sort of stay in a buffer zone, well away from any of that. I tend to not like to get involved in that kind of stuff. So, I mean, naturally, I come to a point where I'm always like, can't we find a solution to this? Does this really need to be had? Do we really have to fight over this? But also, I think strategically, I see things differently because I'm not in the middle of the commotion. I don't want to sound like taking for granted the position that I have either. I think those of us who are at a further distance away, we are offering a different role in the holistic happenings of the whole thing that happens with the world we're involved in here. There has to be observers and witnesses to things, right? And humanity is a collective, a variety of whole, different parts coming together to make the whole. And I think, I'm not going to get too caught up in talking about systems and generalities. I kind of want to just talk about my little epiphany here. But I think all things have purpose, and a thing gets started, that's, what else do you do but see where it goes? If we can remember that the journey here of life, that we're all a part of, is like already set in motion. It's sort of that, well, we wanted to see what would happen if, and we set and so the stakes have been had, we have to play it out. This is, there's not really a different way around that. And so these are things that have been on my mind, right? Especially when you're faced with things that, first and foremost, you don't really have control over. We as individuals have no control over the war machine. We have no control over thousands of years old feuds between neighbors. Literally, and also, everything is based on the systematic function of energy exchanges. What we do have a right over is where we choose to engage our energy in. If we don't engage in those negative systems, they will collapse without us. They have to have more coming in to sustain their systems, because they run by a debt-based laws of negative service. And the world and the universe that we're a part of, the infinite creator created, is not limited like that. It's a fractal discovery of manyness, and all potentials are part of the data set. The God Source sees everything, not just what you want to see or what you think is the best thing or what they've already built up as, are certain things. Ultimate eagle's eye view. Now, I've sort of talked well around my topic, so I guess I am getting down to business, the typical way I do things. If you are new here, I didn't really say this at the start either, thank you for listening and checking my channel out, giving me your ear for a little while. I really do appreciate anyone who sits through these and is listening right now. Organic intelligence, thank you for hearing me, taking the time to hear another. It's so important that we actually extend out this sovereign respect, give people time to speak, to the right to be, to actually listen, to want to hear another. Not for your own specific benefit, not to just grab whatever out of it that you want and to run with it or blurt it back out at them, or just be listening to wait to speak, right? This is, now I'm kind of taking the long road around, for sure, the scenic route. But it's beautiful. And it could be beautiful if we could actually learn to operate from a sovereign standing like this. I'm working on it. I can by no means say I'm a perfect person. I have a lot of wonderful people around me that make it easier for me to want to try this out and practice it. Husband and 2 sons who I love, and who love me and want to seek to better each other and the best for each other. And we really do make it a practice and a point to try to better each other, not cut each other down. And to see our family unit as a whole, and that we each play a role in the whole, and that we're integral pieces that all have a sort of effect on each other. And we want to be mindful of that effect. We want to be held accountable and responsible. Another thing is self-discipline and responsibility. that has to be had and developed in order to even want to do these things, right? So here's my roundabout to what I want to talk about today along the lines of enemies. And friends, and sharing, and how we can seek to practice positive exchanges, in a real world sense. So I have this example, and I've shared it before on my Telegram channel. I don't know if I've done like a whole podcast on it or just mentioned it here and there. I think it's in my conscious parenting workbook booklet thing. I'll have to go back and double check that. I actually did not do a 2025 revamp on that. But whatever. It's this sharing model. I did not make it up. I'm not trying to claim fame to this or anything. I'll have to remember where I found it from. I'm sure in my resources, it's somewhere in one of my files on my computer here, saved. Might even be on my website somewhere around as like a link about sharing and stuff. Watch this video. But anyways, sorry to not have a source link to it. But if you care that much about it, I'm sure you could go put it into this this slogan into a search, and they'll find it for you on the internet for sure these days. It's probably copyrighted. Oh my gosh, no, it's not. So silly. It's you can't copyright a fable, right? A moral, a commandment. God's word, scripture, is free for all, is it not? This one says, "He who cuts first chooses second." And what does that mean? Right? I love this because it's fun. I have two sons, and the sibling rivalry, back and forth things, and the friend-enemy complexity of development with having two children, especially having siblings of the same sex, two sons or two daughters. I'm a middle child of three daughters, and so I got a whole different version of this, but speaking from a parent's point of view here, and to be the sort of referee, in the judge in the point of neutrality, and the calm within the storm, the calm voice in all the chaos. It's obvious what it means, but to break it down and then to talk about, I'll take it a little further about the enemies thing. So think of it as having a loaf of bread, or the last slice of pizza, or the only slice of pizza. This is what I said with my kids, my sons, and the first time I ever brought it up. And then I sort of refer back to it at times of sharing sometimes or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, case in point being that you want to share it. And you can flip a coin to decide who gets to cut and who, and who gets to choose. Or the judge can just say, choose one to cut, the youngest or the oldest, whatever they want to do, or whatever. But anyways, the one who gets to choose where it is cut in half, right? And this is the other thing, the judge will usually cut the portion in half. Like he gets to move it across the pizza and say, "Oh, do you want to cut here, here, here? Move it. Tell me when to stop," and cut it. So when the first person decides where it gets to be cut, and the judge goes and cuts it, now the second person gets to choose which side they want. They choose first, right? So if you get to cut first, you have to choose that portion second, right? That's why I call it cut first, choose second. because it's both people win in that fact, because yeah, the person's naturally going to want to sort of choose where to cut it and cut themselves a slightly bigger slice, right? As if you're a fair person, if you're brothers, maybe even, it might be just like a little bit of a kind of thing. I want the bigger piece, and say, oh, just a little bit bigger, even if you were well-hearted, maybe it's the other way around, whatever. But that bringing in that other person, the opposing person, gets to watch and then choose which one, the slightly bigger one. It adds the dynamic to the discernment here. And it also blatantly pushes fair sharing. Now, I think this exercise is powerful for brothers, and there's an undertone of love, which hopefully we could all extend brotherly love. Even I'm stumbling on saying the words. Out there to people that we don't know, to strangers, to people that we don't like, right? That's what reading through Matthew for the first time in my life. Of course, I'd heard brotherly love before and all these things, but I never went to church in my life. I'm not a traditional churchy person or whatever. I wasn't raised like that. But of course, I've heard these sort of morality things and everything. But when I actually read the thing in Matthew for the first time, where Jesus, that teaching kind of comes from, and he says, it's easy. Good on you. Yeah, it's easy to like those who like what you like. It's easy to love your brother or work on loving your brother or trying hard to love people who you already love, you like something about them. And he went as far to say that, like even the publicans do that. And that's like a reference to like materialistic people who are obsessed with money, people who are very superficial or shallow, materialistic types. Like even those people do that, They love people who love money too, or love people who give them money, and agree with them, make them money. It's easy for that. But what about those who don't? What about those who you hate? How about that? Try doing that. That's where the real work is at. That's where this teaching extends to. That's what this little tight inner circle teaching is supposed to be an exercise for, a prep to extend that out to the stranger, to everyone. And what, like, what kind of, that to me blew my mind, because it's so easy to look at on paper. It's so easy to speak and give lip service to. But everyday life, it's very difficult. And anyone who says that it's not, I'd love to have a conversation with them about that, because not that it's not beneficial, not that it doesn't feel good. It's difficult, like a hard workout is difficult. Somebody who likes to work out, I mean, like, or a good run is difficult, or when you really push yourself to some kind of long-term goal that comes, like, or something that's hard to do. But it generates such positive productivity. It pays for itself in the feelings of doing it. And that's what I feel when I practice this kind of work. I sense it in that. So, back to cut first, choose second. It's a dynamic teaching to think about through brotherhood, to teach in this, family unit, tribal sense, and community with those that we disagree with, or those that we have an animosity to, or even just a rivalry between for some kind of oppositional reason, this kind of hierarchy that's placed upon us. Is it nature, nurture, all these kinds of things. This is the world that we're a part of right now. I believe it's the shading of the densities of ascension we've been moving through. And so, I mean, you can't fight with the weather. You know what I mean? All you can do is move through the seasons. You know what I mean? And so that's the seasons that we've been in, and of course, so we've developed through that way, I think. Through the second, third rays, through into the egotistical solar plexus and through all of that really strong power that that yellow ray represents, and now trying to transition up into the heart, of course, is an empathetic, diverse journey, a deepening of that golden into beautiful green hue, and enlivening it, right, with the real organic breath, the reminder of the firm foundation stability of the whole four portions that we're actually a part of. You know, remembering proportionality, seasons, circular change, you know, the whole flow really starts to become more fertile ground in the times that we're moving into. And so humanity will respond more in like to that, you know, if we're listening to sequential growth, if we're watching how organic is changing and what we're, you know, and we go with the flow or not. But there's a lot of nails into dug in, trying not to be moving, you know, there's a lot of heels in the ground, and also people who have such invested falsely into the illusions that were really built up in the world, that the negative promises that could stay forever, that in fact are not conducive to holistic growth, and so they cannot stay forever. They're not really organic, and they were never true. And yet people are really holding on to them. But I think that you know, the duality is so strong, and it's so forced and pushed, was and has been pushed onto us, where of course 3 grows out of 2. It's so close to 2. It's reliant on 2. It's built up. It's most of its whole knowing on what it's been told by 1 and 2, you know. But at some point 3 does grow into its own gnosis that can be love-based and can be expansive and all-encompassing in the way that positive service should be. And that dynamic necessary first is the equal footing of sovereign recognition and unification of the fractal bits of the whole, and understanding and sort of relinquishing the need to actually control that whole thing, and remembering that you're just a part of another great whole above you, as above so below, teaches us, right? And that opens up the gateway more to the fourth space, and into understanding the real dimensionality of yourself and of your own experience here. And hence that ripples out into the experience in external space, the third-party reality space. Others around you can get better feeling and better space when they're around you, and they also are doing the same things, and their work gets in a combo with your work and expands even greater, because this is the wonderful thing about sharing. You're both fed in the sharing, and you're also learning something deeper in the sharing. And so back to bring it to the sharing of the cup first, choose second. Both parties are learning depth in just the action of having to make the choice of who gets to share, let alone the fact that you're both hungry and want to eat, and it's a necessity of filling up and nourishment in a physical sense of getting your worth and what you're worthy of, and understanding how when we take, we share, and when we give, we get. And it's and the word taking almost has a negative connotation on its own, but when we receive or we accept and you know, that other half of what we get from that sharing, you know, and we have to bring in that nourishment, we have to eat it, we have to get that second piece, we get the piece we chose, or we get the piece that we cut, you know, and it's such an other type of eating, digestion, receiving, and bringing in. There's such a, if you know, the 3 dimensions, physicality, a mental and spiritual sense of happenings, you know, physical, sort of electric, energetic exchange, and then we have the spiritual soul essence of it exchange. And of course the external, internal, and then the back and forth of the whole happenings of those 2 internal and external systems exchanging what they're exchanging, getting, and how they do that, and how they bring it in, and how they tell each other about how it happened. You know, all our systems are speaking to each other and taking stock notes, balancing books, learning lessons, exchanging energy and nutrients, molecules, matter, water, all of these light, we get so much more than we realize in each action. Or we've previously realized or allowed ourselves to want to remember, right? But here, trying to open up and remember that there's a lot more going on. Now, if we could ever amount to a space, and imagine this in third-party space, where we could have literal enemies, with, ever being able to sovereignly come together in a place where they had to problem solve whatever the issues were with this type of technique, draw boundaries first and choose second. That's all I'll say about that. But we don't, not we, because I just say we as the collective we. And as I said before, I have to give a great nod to the fact that I'm part of the collective, but at the same time, I have such a dissociated view. I have to also acknowledge that I am at a perimeter. I am part of the internal view. I'm an outsider or an outlier to the main scatterplot and the average happenings. But yeah, what a deep teaching, what domino effects, what great gravity could be gained if enemies could think like that. If we were in a world where the common knowledge, the laws of the systems and operation of the industries, of the nations, of economy and business, or whatever we would call those words, because those words just immediately take us into the negative laws and rules and structures. But if there was a positive, more organic versions to be had of those structures, that would, that would be the automatic stance. That would be the way that we thought about things in the forefront of normalcy, of the mean, would be, thinking in that manner. Not to say there'd ever not be outliers, not to say that are not always different points of view, but to, again, bring it to that scatterplot graph image of the universe, of the world, of the happenings, of reality space around us. There's always sort of that main manyness, that creates the average, that creates that medial area that most things go around and happen, gravitate towards. So, I think that is going to be it for me for now. Thanks for listening to the kind of roundabout discussion on this little moral technique, little problem-solving tactic, parenting tool, self-parenting inner child, exercises of light and shadow work and energy alchemy, balancing. At the end of the day, too. Oh, last thing that I'll bring in, sort of before I do close out, is you can always take this as an internal view. And I do this a lot with myself about things. In versions of myself that want to argue about time management or importance and value on certain things, or setting up a sort of dynamic inside of myself where I can zoom out enough to just remember there should be a judge sitting in between these two feelings, and how would that observer try to reign over the situation and allow that space for both feelings, for the whatever the extremes seem to be, and sometimes just that in itself kind of can break the chains and allows and unlocks these, a better solution. And sometimes you have to sit with it for a while, But I guarantee you, sit quiet long enough, and some things will be had. Something will come up. One on the other side, either side, both, a root cause will be felt. And then you'll be able to sort of find that gauge and spectrum, like you are taking the knife over the slice of bread. Where's the middle? Where's the median? Where's an equal side where both are being heard? But again, it takes the will, it takes a want to do that kind of thing. We have to have a want and a love. But when we practice internally and we have a want and a love for life, just to have a good life, I think, to honor our maker, your creator. You were bestowed on purpose with a purpose if you're alive looking out of your eyeballs. And the way to be grateful for that gift is to do it in action right now. It's not to say thank you later at the end of life or sorries or to realize some kind of great epiphany or even to do great work in life. Yeah, that might be a symptomatic after effect. But the main doings is just to be grateful that you're alive and to be happy in your day and to feel good and positive. You know, not over the top utopia or some kind of ego-driven righteousness over others by some kind of powerful stance where you feel propped up and pillared above some kind of chosen separate thing, you know, but just neutrality, just a peace of mind that you are on equal footing as everyone else, that you are a part of an equal ratio, that you have a right just like everyone else to just be, and that in just being, that is it. You got the gold star. We all get one, and that's it. Everything else is a symptomatic byproduct. And there's many different types, you know? But to just go through them with that sort of observation and to try to more consciously observe that life through that more, you know, I like to see it as the mind-body-spirit complex and to see each as having a leading role as a CEO boss for each of those system structures and, you know, try to check in with each one of those and see the balancing act between them. Of course, I have my ultimate self, my conscious person, me, who sits above those, who, you know, is always the self. But to create that dynamic understanding within myself, this prismatic working ground, I think is truly an honoring to the great creator. Because, and I'll say it, you know, we have the spectrum splitting. Prismatic creation divided on purpose with purpose. You know, and the triad is a beautiful perspective to look at things through. It's a strong shape. So yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about the triad having polar opposites and the overseer as the judge, you know, the friend and the enemy, and the overseer as the judge, or the opposing pieces, sort of not friend and enemy, I guess aren't good. Weren't good choice to say, but sort of the two different opposing enemies. Again, magnet. I don't even know. Okay, I'm gonna keep going when I've been signing off, and this is getting a little too conscious stream of consciousness-ish. New Age rambling. But thank you again for listening. If you haven't made it through this whole thing, I really do appreciate your audience. And if you're looking for anything from me, God forbid you want more from me in the meantime, you haven't had enough, you can always find more. YouTube and BitChute channels have hundreds of videos on all things introspection, spirituality, and happiness. I'm on the internet at a.Marie.Speaks.com. That has plenty of stuff about me, my personal writings and journey, Also about third-party references, tips and tools, all free, sort of links and points of research if anybody's interested in finding out more about anything metaphysical, esoteric. There's lots of different, there's even health and wellness section over there on my site. So if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, check out a.Marie.Speaks.com. If you use Telegram, over there, that's pretty much the only thing I use, social media wise, but you can find me at a.Marie Speaks over there if you do use that platform. Thanks for listening again. Thanks for your contribution to our collective, which is even more important than listening to my podcast. I hope you get out there and have a wonderful day or evening, wherever in the world you are. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.